Hello, everyone. This is Rad. Thank you for joining the webinar this afternoon. I recognize a whole bunch of familiar names on the list and people that we've traveled together or photographed together over the years, and it's great to see you here. Thanks so much for coming. And to those of you who are new, just a quick background about myself, and then we'll get into the webinar. By the way, just so you know, I this is a recording that I'm doing after the fact. We actually all just had this webinar a little bit ago, those of you who were there, and I forgot to click the record button. So I'm redoing some of this, so you'll have this to replay at your convenience later. So just again about myself, I've been doing photography for years. I have a degree in journalism from Indiana University and did photojournalism there in the 70s and 80s and worked for a few small town Indiana papers and did some freelance work for a while. It's kind of ironic that I'm now doing iPhone photography, which is really at the other end of the continuum from photojournalism, where you really don't mess with the pictures at all. Because I do now, that's what I love doing, is taking license after the fact and modifying images to add tone or transform them into some other kind of work of art. That's where the fun is for me. So I got started with the iPhone in 2010 when I bought my first iPhone. Didn't even know it had a camera in it, and discovered what a great camera it was, and most importantly, that there were all these apps that you could use that almost transformed it to being like having Photoshop in the palm of your hand. So I've really enjoyed using those, and I love sharing what I'm doing. I worked in corporate America for 21 years, and I started this business in 2010 and did it part-time for a few years, and then retired completely from my corporate job a little over 2 years ago, and have been doing teaching and leading workshops and tours around the world ever since. And it's just been an incredible experience and a learning journey that has been a lot of fun. So without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into what we're going to do today and try and take you through the paces that we covered earlier, and you'll have a recording of this then. Sorry I didn't do it earlier. So these are the images that we're going to work with today. I'm going to navigate out here to this little folder I created. The first one that I'll take us through, this is an image that I did in Old Havana last month. I was there, and just a photograph of this young man walking down the street. That's the straight image, and this is what I transformed it into here. Let me turn it sideways so you get a better view. So you can see that I've added a bunch of textures here to kind of dress up this background, but then masked out to where the image of the young man and the face here is still very sharp and clear for us to see. The other image that I'm going to show you today, back out here, this is a photograph that I took at Conner Prairie, which is a living museum here in Indianapolis. It's set in 1837, and they have what they call interpreters who are out in the village, and every quarter or so they open it up to photographers. We can go in early in the morning when no one's there and walk around and take photographs. And this is one of the shots that I took. I used the HDR app called Vivid HDR, and I'll be showing you that a little bit. And we're not going to go into great detail with it, but if you want those settings, you can email me and I will send you a screenshot of the settings that I recommend for that. So this is the image as it came right out of Vivid HDR. Took it through SnapSeed and a few other things, and ended up with this vintage version of it. One of the things that I really like to do is take a picture that doesn't have any telltale signs of today in it, and then process it to look like something that might have been taken 100 years ago. So I'll be taking you through this, showing you how I used Old Photo Pro and Image Blender to create this image. So let me jump right into the first one. Let's start with this one of the Cuban person. Before I do that, I want to show you how I took the picture. I used this resident camera, and I'm going to go and open that up. It's the software that comes with the phone, so it's not an external, camera app. It's the resident camera that comes with it. Oh boy, you're going to get to see how dirty my office is, or how cluttered anyway. So this is the, let me put my finger over there and see a little better. So this is what the screen looks like. If I turn it vertically, might look more familiar to you. The thing that allowed me, that I used to take that photograph of the Cuban boy walking down the street, I used what's called burst mode on the native camera. To do a burst of shots, if you hold your finger on the shutter button, I'm going to do that right now. Watch what happens. I just took 31 images in the time it took. You saw how quickly that was. When that happens, you can capture whatever motion is happening in the scene, and you have a collection of 31 images of that motion. So here's what that looks like. If we go back to the camera roll, I'm going to go out to, let's see, back out of that. I'm going to scroll up to where I have that. Sorry, there's no quick way to do this because it's a stack. I can't easily isolate the stack, so I have to go through here. So it's in this area, November 3rd, and it's right here. Okay, so if you look closely at this icon on your screen, or at this image on your screen, you can see that there's this little edge up here at the top of the image. That's how you can distinguish a burst or a collection of photos. I think this is supposed to illustrate a stack of images. So if I tap on that stack of images, which is what I got when I held down the shutter on the resident camera, you can see here it tells me I've got 22 images in the burst, 22 photos in the burst. So if I go down below and tap on select, now I can see down at the bottom here I've got this row of, can you see my cursor? Yeah, there it is. There's this row of images. Now if I move my finger and drag across, look, you can see the guy walking down the street. So this is a technique, not only the camera technique, but I chose this spot. I really liked this particular setting. I liked this, what I saw on the wall here, and I waited for a subject to walk down the street. I was actually staying in a casa right around the corner, so I was kind of in my neighborhood. And I just stood and waited and watched, and as this boy came down the street, I held the button on the shutter, and I got this whole stream of images. Now, you can see here, one of those images has a dot under it. Sometimes you'll have a bunch of images that have little dots under them. What that dot is telling you is that the camera or the computer in the camera has determined that these images with the dot under them are the sharpest images in the stack. So that's one of the things you can use to help you make a selection. In this case, I also was moving along here. I wanted to choose an image that showed the motion of him walking, and so I really liked this one because one foot is not quite all the way down and the other foot's coming up. So that was my choice for an image. I also liked his location here in the frame, kind of approaching this intersection over here. If you're thinking rule of thirds at all, he's kind of approaching that, and the face on the wall from the poster here is also kind of in that realm. So I'm going to go ahead. I tapped on this. I said I was done up at the top, and it's now saved that separate image in the camera roll. So I'm going to go back to, I've got it in a different place for our purposes today. But so there's the image that I chose. So now I'm ready to begin my processing for this, and I'm going to take this into SnapSeed. And many of you may have participated in the earlier webinar I did that was just focusing on SnapSeed and the workflow that I use there. And you may want to look at that video of that session because it's SnapSeed's probably it's the first step I take with almost everything I do for some of the basic processing. So the first thing I'm going to do here is go down to the share icon down here in the bottom, this one right here, and I'm going to tap on that, and I have the opportunity now to copy this image. So there's the copy icon right here. I'm going to tap on that, and I've now copied that image to a clipboard. And so now I'm going to go to SnapSeed, and you notice I don't go looking for icons on my desk, my phone. I simply use the search feature within Snaps or within the computer and the phone to find my apps. SnapSeed's already in the tray because I just used it recently, so I'm going to tap on that, and it's bringing me into the last image that I worked on in SnapSeed. I'm going to go ahead and tap the Open button up here, and then down below I'm going to click on Paste Image, or tap on Paste Image, and there's the image of our boy walking down the street. So I'm going to turn this sideways so we have a bigger view of it. So the first thing I'm going to do, I want to look around this image and see, is there anything that I need to do in terms of cropping, or is there any, I don't know, any unwanted elements in the image that I need to erase or take out. As I look at it, I don't see any wires or trash or anything like that, but I do notice that I didn't do a very good job of cropping when I took the picture, because I've got this area over here. Now, most of the time, I really like to take the time in my composition to crop at the time I take the shot, but it's not always possible, or sometimes I just don't do it as I didn't in this case. So the first thing I'm going to do with this image is go down to the pencil, and again, I'm not going to go through all of the different things on SnapSeed. If there's another webinar I did that covers some of that, and I encourage you to take a look at that if you need that kind of review. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on the pencil, and I'm going to go to the crop icon and tap on that. Now, this is coming up at 4/3 aspect ratio. That's the default for the iPhone. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to change it to the square or some other aspect ratio because I want this particular aspect ratio, but I want to get rid of this area over here. So to do that, I'm going to take my finger up in the upper left corner, and I'm just going to drag in until I've cropped that out. I don't want to go more than I need, but probably about right there. So maybe a little bit there. So now I like this crop because if you look at this is our rule of thirds grid on the screen. We've got the portrait of the poster on the wall, kind of in this area right here, which is prime real estate in our frame, and then we've got the image of the figure walking toward that intersection down here. So I really kind of like the positioning of things. I also like that we have this element up here in the upper left. So I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark to accept that crop and commit to that crop. So now the next thing I'm going to do is tap on the pencil again, and this time I'm going to go to Toon Image, and this is where I start many of the things that I do in SnapSeed with Toon Image. And the way to access the things that you can adjust is to put your finger on the screen and scroll vertically up and down on the screen. And you notice you've got all of these different elements that you can adjust. I typically start with Ambience, and I take my finger and I drag all the way to the right and bring it up to where it's 100%. And in doing that, I then evaluate the image. So I've brought it up to 100%, and I look at it to decide if I like what I'm seeing. Now, if I take my finger and press it on the screen, I can look at before and after. So I'll do that again. There's before, and there's after. Now, it's at 100. It's at 100. So I'm looking here, and I'm seeing this might be a little bit more saturated than I want. So I'm going to back that off and drop it down to maybe 75 or 80%. Let's say 80%. So that looks pretty good. That's where I'm going to stay. Now I'm going to put my finger back on the screen and slide down, and I'm going to go to highlights. Now, highlights is like having a brightness slider just for the highlights in the image, the bright spots in the image. So by that I mean, if we were to use the brightness slider, which is up here at the top, it would brighten the whole image, both the shadows and the highlights. It would brighten everything. But with the highlight slider, you have the opportunity to brighten or darken just the bright spots in the image. So if I take my finger and slide all the way across to 100%, look at how I've blown out all these white areas in the screen, but I haven't really affected the brightness of the darker areas. Well, that's clearly way too much highlight. We don't want that. But if we go back down to 0, what I like to do is drop my highlights into the negative. So I'm going to take it all the way down to 100%, which is way too much, but you can see what's happening. We're getting more contrast, we're getting deeper textures, we're getting more saturation in the color, and so highlights, by going down and into the negative, you get the opportunity to get add some richness to your image. So I'm going to back that off. In this case, what I do is slide back and forth. I look at the different areas of the image, and I look for a sweet spot. And you know, so I'm looking here. That's negative. I'm going to probably stop somewhere about right there in the negative. So here's before, and here's after. Next, I'm going to go down to the shadows, and the same thing here. Shadows is a very specific adjustment just for shadows, like a brightness slider just for the shadows in the image. So if I increase the brightness or the shadows, I'm lightening the shadows, and if I drop it down, I'm darkening. Now, there aren't a lot of harsh shadows in this image, but if you look at the edges, like over here in this dark area on the right, maybe in the curb, you're starting to see what where you get that the darkening of the shadows. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to drop it down just a tiny bit, only about 10. Gives me a little darkness over here, a little contrast that I'm looking for, and that's it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is go down to warmth, and I'm going to adjust the warmth up to maybe 5. So I'm getting a little bit of richness in the tones. It's yellow, adding yellow to the image to kind of give it a little bit warmer feel. So now that's it. I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark, and now I've made those adjustments. The next thing I'm going to do is sharpen. I'm going to go to the details screen here, and I am going to adjust the structure and the sharpening. Now, typically, I encourage you to look at every image as you sharpen it, but I've also discovered and learned that if anything over about 20 on either one of these is going to probably be too much. I usually go to about 21 or so, or 20 on structure, and then 20 on sharpening. Now again, look at each image because they're all going to be a little different. But so there's our before, there's our after, and the last thing I want to do then is go to tonal contrast. Now, tonal contrast, if I press before and after, here's the thing about tonal contrast. It's the only one of you enter into it, it doesn't default to 0. It comes in with already with an already default adjustment of 30 on the high tones, 50 on the mid tones, and 30 on the low tones. So before I do any adjustment at all, the very first thing I do is put my finger on the screen, look at the before and the after. And look at this area, like right in here. Watch what happens. There's before and there's after. So it's giving us a little more contrast. It's bringing out some of the detail in the wall. It's things that in this case, I like. Now, sometimes I'll do this and I'll be not happy with that result, and I'll just simply not apply tonal contrast and click the X and go out. But in this case, I'm going to keep it. And I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. So now, there's our image. That's as much as I want to do right now. I'm going to go ahead and save that. To do that, well, before I do that, let's review. So here's the little white box up here now shows a 4. That 4 indicates how many different adjustments we've made. So each of these is a stack or a layer that we've made adjustments. We started out with our original. We cropped it to eliminate that edge. Then we applied the Toon image settings that we wanted. Then we sharpened it. And then we adjusted the tonal contrast. So you can kind of see a history of where you've been there. I'm ready to save it now, so I'm going to go tap on the save icon. And I always save a copy because that ensures that your original isn't affected. And when you open this image again in SnapSeed, it will come in with these 4 stacks already here, and you can resume your editing where you left off. So it's kind of a nice feature that way. So there's our image, and the next thing I want to do now is go to another app that I really enjoy. It's called Enlight. And again, it's here in the tray because I've just used it. I'm going to tap it to open it. And Enlight is one of these apps that I really encourage you to dig into it. It is an amazing app. It's got lots of incredible features that you can just do so many things with. This is, let me go back, select the image. So down here are my camera roll images showing this is the one I want to work with. I'm going to go up here and tap on Artistic. And when I do, I have all these different choices. Now, I often go to painting, and there are a bunch of different really cool painting presets that I encourage you to explore. But the one that I'm going to use for this is in Sketch. So as I tap on the Sketch icon, look at all these different options that we have for sketching. Just a bunch of different things, and each of those is adjustable by sliding your finger back and forth on the screen, and you can adjust the intensity of those. And I'm going to go along here until I find the one called Grainy. And there it is. And I'm going to just play around with it a little bit. I'm going to slide that down to about 30. And I'm going to go with that. Now, just so you know, and you may want to explore this, or I may do a webinar on it at another time, you do have a masking feature in this app. So one of the things I want to do is bring out the detail of the real detail of this figure and the face here. We could do that in this app, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to show you another way that I'm going to do it, and a way that I really like. It gives me a little bit of extra options to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the check mark at the top, and when I do that, then I'm going to save it by clicking on the little arrow icon there at the top, and then I'm going to click Save the Photo. A lot of clicking here. But it's saving that out now to our camera roll. So if we go back to the camera roll and go take a look, there's the image that we did in SnapSeed, and there's the image that just came out of Enlight. So the next thing I want to do here is take these into Image Blender. So I'm going to go to the app Image Blender, swiping down on the center of my screen, and again, it's in my tray because I just used it. I'm going to tap on Image Blender, and it's opening it up to show the last two things or last image that I worked on. I'm going to go down to the lower left here, and I'm going to tap on that, and I'm going to remove that picture because I don't want to work on that one anymore. I'm going to go over on this side and tap and remove that image. But before I do, I also want to reset, because when I was working in there, I remember that I did some masking. So I'm going to tap on Reset, and I'm going to reset the mask, because we don't want, if we don't do that, when we bring in a new image, it's going to apply the masking to the last image, to the one we bring in, which is sort of crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that and remove that image. And now I'm ready to put my new images into Image Blender. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here and tap on the left box and go to the library. And I'm going to tap on the camera roll. And I'm going to first put in the image that came out of SnapSeed, this one right here. So I'm going to tap on that. And there it is. And then I'm going to go over and tap on the box on the bottom right. And I'm going to go get the other image, the one that came out of Enlight. So there's that one. So now I've got them both in there. Now I'm going to turn this sideways because I think it'll give you a better look at it, I think. Okay, so yeah, there we go. So what we have here now is a slider down here on the bottom, and as we move it all the way to the left, it's 100% of the image on the left, and as we move it to the right, it's 100% of the image out of Enlight. So in this way, you can move back and forth and get different intensities of those two images. Now the other thing that you have here within Blender, you have the opportunity to adjust blend modes. So if we go up here and tap on this icon in the center, or if we swipe our finger up on the screen, it brings up all the blend modes. And these are standard blend modes that you might have seen in Photoshop or Lightroom or many other applications that allow you to put two images together. And they're familiar probably. There's normal, multiple screen, overlay. each one is a different blending mode that gives a different result. And so I encourage you to go through and explore those. You're going to find different ones are going to apply differently for different images. But for this picture, I'm going to go ahead and stick with normal. And to rid those from the screen, I'm just going to swipe down and they go away. So now I'm in normal mode. I want to bring out the detail in the poster of this face here and also the detail of this figure that's in here. So if you think about it this way, what we've got is this picture. Think of it as two pictures just stacked one on top of the other. This image is on the bottom and the one on the right is on the top. What we're going to do is do some masking now, and we're going to wipe away part of the image on the top so that the image on the back can show through. So to do that, we're going to go up and click on the pencil, or you can swipe to the right. I'm sorry, swipe to the right, and you enter the masking mode. So again, what we're going to do is wipe away something from the top image so that the back image can show through. The first thing we're going to do is go down here to the this little brush icon. It's a little circle here at the bottom. When I tap on that, you notice that we have several different options here. The one on the left is a hard-edged brush, and this one is a feathered edge. So we want to choose the feathered edge for this. Now, there's no way to enlarge or decrease the size of that brush, but other than by zooming the image, and as you do, the brush gets relatively smaller to the image. So what we want to do is I'm going to blow these up. I'm going to start with the face on the wall here, and I'm just going to start painting with my finger. And look, I'm wiping away the top layer of that top layer image, allowing the back layer, which is the real picture, to show through. So I'm erasing some of that filter that we applied in Enlight. And you can do as much or little of this as you want, and you might choose to use a stylus that allows you to get really precise and see what you're doing better. So I'm going to do that, and then I also want to go do the same thing on the figure down here. So I'm going to, using my finger, and I'm going really fast, so I might not be real precise, but again, that's where stylus can come in, and I'm just going to, kind of wipe all over this torso and down this arm to reveal the figure beneath the texture. So I'm going through that and so on. You get the idea. So I'm going to go down here and get his legs, and especially want to get the shoes because that's where I see a lot of the, his feet are in motion. They're both off the ground basically. So I kind of like that. So I want to make sure that I free them up from the texture that's hiding that. So now we have him more visible, and I'm also going to go over here. I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to just go in here and open this up a little bit and let some of the real this real shelter thing come out. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We'll find out. So there we have it. We've made those changes. Now, one other thing you can do here, this eye down here on the right, if I tap on the eye, you've got some sliders here that allow you to adjust each of the images. Now, this doesn't affect the final image. It's not going to look like this, but it's showing us where we might have missed. So as I look at this, I can see right here I've missed a little bit of area that I would want to paint out. And also maybe a little over here, his shirt is coming through. And then I also see that I missed part of his leg down here. So it's just a way of allowing you to see what you've missed. And you can adjust that back and forth. Okay, so once we have that the way we want it, I'm going to go up here and click the Save button. And when I do that, now we still haven't saved this image back to our camera roll, but we just committed to those masking changes. So now when I take my finger and slide it all the way to the right, we're getting the texture complete, but the figure in the foreground, the boy, and then the poster on the wall are sharp. So again, it's just a way of kind of playing with that. I sort of had the sense that Old Havana is somewhat surreal, and I really wanted to kind of illustrate that in this image. Here we have this crumbling, facade of a building, and the colorful poster on the wall, and then we got this young kid who looks like he could be strolling down, the street in Manhattan. He's really hip. He's dressed really contemporary. He's got his earbuds in, and yet he's in Old Havana in a really dilapidated environment. And so it's just kind of a fun way of illustrating that. And so there's our image. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and click the save icon and save the image to our camera roll. So this is something that you can apply. You can do this with your images. I do this quite frequently, blending one image with a different version of the same image, so that you have these different layers that you can play with. We're just scratching the surface too of what Image Blender can do. There are many other features of this app that allow you to flatten images, allow you to play with the textures of each image a little bit. So in another webinar, I'll be showing how to do some of that at a later time. All right, so we saved that. It's back in our camera roll. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the next image that I want to work on, the one of Connor Prairie. I mentioned that I took that with Vivid HDR. I'm going to go out there and take a minute to open this up. This is what Vivid HDR looks like. The first time you open it, it's going to open up with this help screen defaulting, and it shows you some of the things that the features of the tool. You can tap to focus anywhere on the screen, or if you tap in the very center of the screen, it will autofocus for you. So you have the option of letting it autofocus, or you can tap elsewhere to focus on your image where you want to. You also have you can slide left or right. You notice that there aren't any icons for settings on this screen, but they're hidden. You have to swipe to bring up the settings, and there's also a gallery of all the images that you take. In addition to having them in your camera roll, the images also reside in a gallery in the app. So you can take a look at those anytime by tapping the little light bulb icon down in the lower right. I'm going to tap that right now and turn off these help buttons. So this is what the screen looks like when you start out. I'm going to take a second and show you these settings, because I encourage you to set it up this way. And if you want me to send you a screenshot of these settings at a later date, I'm happy to do that. Just send me an email. So again, to get these settings, I took my finger and swiped from the right side of the screen and into the center, and it brings up these buttons. The first one is a toggle. It's toggling between 5, 3, and auto select. So what it's doing, you're telling an HDR image is created by taking multiple pictures of the same thing and then blending them together. Well, you can set this to take 3 or 5 images, or you can set it to auto and let the computer decide, or the app decide, how many pictures to take. I usually set it to auto. I figure this thing's a lot smarter than I am, and so I haven't seen a need to change those, but if I learn of a need, I'll share it with you, but right now I set it to auto. This next button is it's just on or off, and it's the geotag. So it allows you to, it captures the location data when you take a photograph. So I turn it on. I take photographs of barns out in the middle of nowhere, and because I have this turned on, I can use it in combination with another app called View EXIF. It's VIEWEXIF. And View EXIF takes this data, and you can pull up that data on any image you've taken with this turned on, and it tells you the location of where you took that photo. Beyond that, you can tap a button on, there's a pin on a map, you could tap that button and it will actually give you directions, driving directions to that location. So it's really a tremendously useful tool. I use it all the time. The next one is just the rule of thirds icon. It's either off or it's on. I usually leave it on as it helps me with as I think about composition. The next one is this little camera icon here. When we tap that, you want auto preview on, and that's going to allow you to see the different presets that you have available here. So, and you get to see a preview of it before you save. The next thing down here, this has to do with posting to Facebook or other places. I'm not even going to open that. You can look at it on your own if you want. But the one that's really important is this one here on the bottom. I'm going to tap on that, and it brings up this panel. These are the settings that I recommend here. You want to save this to your camera roll. You want to have it on. You want to save it as a JPEG. Now, you can save as a TIFF, and I love TIFF files, and they're bigger, and I think they're great once in a while. But because this is an HDR image, it's already several images combined, you're getting a much bigger file already. If you change this to TIFF, it's going to be a huge file size, and it's going to take up a lot of space on your storage. So I don't think it's necessary unless you're printing a billboard or something. I would leave this set to JPEG. You want lazy HDR to be on, and it will allow you some options for changing your image after you've taken it. And then finally, the original image. This is something you can debate whether you want to do or not. I like to save the original image to my camera roll, and I save it as a JPEG again rather than a TIFF because I don't need that big amount of space. Now, doing that, you have to understand you're redundant in saving it because this app also saves the image in its own gallery. So you may decide if you have a camera that has less than 125 gigabytes of space, you may want to turn this to off. But that's an option that you have. You'll notice that even as having these as JPEG images, you're saving you're taking up 26 megabytes of memory per shot. Now, my phone is a 6 Plus, so it's an older phone. Some of you have newer models that have higher resolution images. You're going to have a bigger number here than I do. But these are the settings that I recommend for Vivid HDR. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. So the other thing I mentioned that Vivid HDR keeps its images in its own gallery. So if I take my finger and swipe from the left side of the screen, I suddenly come into where all my images are. And if I click on this grid up here at the very top, there's a little grid there. I'm going to tap on that, and it's going to show me all the images that I've taken. And you notice it's got them clustered by date. Now, the one that we're going to work with is right down here in the right here. So I'm going to tap on that, and it brings it up in Vivid HDR. And I've got all these tools down here across the bottom. Well, one of those tools is this palette right here. When I tap on that palette, it tells me that the current image has been saved in the as a lively designation. So if I tap on this lively button down here, it shows me all of the different presets that I have. There are 5 different presets that I can choose to change this image to. Now, I could have selected any one of these at the time I took the picture, but I can go back now and change it to any of the others. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave this at lively, but I could change it to gray art, so it's black and white. I could change it to a bleached. I could change it to what they call dramatic, or I could go to natural, or I could just leave it at lively, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go up and save this again to my camera roll because it'll make it easier for me to find it. It's probably already there, but I'm going to save it again. And so it prompts you, do you want to save it? And I say, yes, I do. And so now I'm ready to go work with this image. One other thing I'll show quickly about Vivid HDR, just like SnapSeed, you have the opportunity to put your finger on the screen. I'm sorry, first you have to be in this palette mode. I'm going to tap on the palette. You have your opportunity now within that palette mode to slide your finger up and down on the screen. Look at all these things you can adjust. Again, similar to SnapSeed, you've got saturation, temperature, detail, shadows, and highlights. I like making some of those adjustments in this app because it's making these adjustments and then saving them at that large file size. So something to think about. We're not going to go into a great deal on that now, but know that that capability exists within this app. Again, another really powerful app that you can go really deep with. So we've already saved that. I'm going to go out to my camera roll, and now here is, let's go back to, here we go, and there's the image we want to work with. So again, just like before, I'm going to tap on the share icon down in the lower left here, and I'm going to copy that image to a clipboard. So now it's sitting out there in a clipboard waiting for me to put it in SnapSeed. So I'm going to go back to SnapSeed, open it up. I'm going to click the open button up in the upper left, and then I'm going to say paste the image from the clipboard. And there's our image. Again, I'm going to turn this horizontal so you can see a bigger version of it on your screen. So again, I'm going to take us really quickly through that standard workflow that I have for using SnapSeed. The first thing I'm going to do is look at the image. Is there anything I need to remove from it? Any trash, any lines, anything like that? And there isn't. I'm going to look around the perimeter of the image and see if there's anything I need to eliminate or crop out. And I'm very happy with this crop. I don't really need to do anything. This is one where I actually took the time when I took the photograph to compose it at that time. So I don't have to copy or crop any of this image out. So I'm going to go ahead and go right to Toon Image. I'm going to click on the pencil here, and I'm going to go into Toon Image, and I'm going to make the same adjustments we made last time on the other image. I'm going to slide down here to Ambience. I'm going to crank it up to 100%. I'm going to look at that and go, it's a little too much. I'm going to back it off to a sweet spot somewhere around 75 in that area. You don't have to be precise about it. And then I'm going to slide down to highlights. Now highlights, this is going to be important because we've got this sky up here that's kind of plain. If I take my highlights and drop them into the negative, well, there's before our adjustment, and there's after. I'm going to take these highlights and slide down, and look at how the sky darkens as I do that. So I'm adding a little bit of kind of controlling the tone of that sky. Now if I take it down too much, you can see it gets really, really dark and really kind of noisy and grainy. I don't want that. So I only want to take it down a little bit. There's 0. If I take it down just a tiny bit, I'm filling in some of these lighter areas, and that's what I'm going for. Then I'm going to drop it down into shadows. Now, I don't necessarily want to open the shadows up here, but I may want to darken some of those a little bit. So if I take my finger and slide to the right, to the left, I can darken the shadows. So why would I want to do that? Sometimes I think it adds a little drama to the image if you can increase the darkness of some areas, like over here a little bit in the fence, and over here. That's just my feeling on it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to go down to warmth, and I'm going to just warm this image up maybe up to 5. So here's before, and here's after. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. So now the next thing I'm going to do is go to Details. This is where I can do my sharpening of this image. And again, anything over about 20 is usually too much. And I do look at each image and make a judgment on that, but more and more I find that that's where I go, about 20, 21. Now, I'm going to commit to that. But what's happened is when we sharpen our sky, we've gotten a little noise up here. So one of the things that we don't usually want to do is sharpen sky for that very reason. It adds noise to the otherwise smoother sky. So what I want to do is I want to mask out that adjustment of sharpening to the sky. So if I go over here to the number 2 and tap on that, it's showing us the stacks of changes that we've made. We started out with an original, we made a Toon image change, and then we made detail changes, and this is where we sharpened and adjusted structure. So I'm going to tap on the little arrow here, And again, I can either throw this stack away, I can make adjustments to it by clicking on the sliders, or I can go in and use the masking brush, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to tap on that masking brush. I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to paint in the area, and what I'm telling SnapSeed is apply the sharpening to these areas that I'm touching and painting in, but leave the sky alone. So now we've got our sharpening all down in here, but we haven't sharpened the sky. So I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark and say OK to that. And then click the little arrow in the upper left up here and go back to our main screen. So now we've adjusted the Toon image, we've tuned the image, and we've done sharpening. The next thing I want to do here is go down and do tonal contrast again. That's this one right here. I'm going to tap on tonal contrast, and excuse me. This is one where I think I mentioned this the last time. Most of the other tools, when you enter into them, they default to 0. When you enter tonal contrast, it already makes an adjustment for you, and it defaults to 30, 50, and 30, high, medium, and low. So it's already coming in with some adjustments. So your image is changed before you do anything. So before I do anything, I put my finger down on the screen and look at before and after. I'm going to do that again. And look at this area right here around the barn and see if you can see what these changes are doing. I'm going to expand it a little bit. So there's before and there's after. Can you see it? It's bringing in a little bit of contrast, a little bit more detail, but it's so subtle. Where you really notice it is when you print. It will really make a difference in the quality of your prints. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that change. And that's it. I am done. I am not going to do anything else with this image except save it. And I could stop here with my processing. I mean, that's quite a nice image as it is. The color's great, and I could stop here. But what I want to do, because this is a scene that looks like it could have been the same 100 years ago. There's nothing from modern day in the image, so I'm going to make it a vintage image. And I'm going to take you out and show you one of my favorite apps. It's an old app, but it's wonderful. It's called Old Photo Pro, and I just typed in OL in my search, and voila, it pops right up. So I don't have to do any searching for the app. I'm going to tap on Old Photo Pro, and it looks like this when it comes up. I want to go out and load a photo, so I tap on Load Photo, go to my camera roll, and there's their image down at the bottom that I want to work with. So I'm going to tap on it, and it takes it in, and it's going to process this image. It takes a second. It's an old app, but it's a oldie bit of goodie. So this is our image, and I can't turn this vertically for you, so that's as big as we're going to get to see it on the screen. But you notice that it's got a border on it that's kind of ragged. It's got some scratches in it and so on. And that's something that you can adjust. And you may keep those things or not. I'm going to tap on the Edit button, and we can go in and make some changes to that. One of the first things I do, I usually take the edges out because I just don't prefer them. But it's totally a taste thing. You may like them. I'm going to go down and tap on Papers and Edges in the lower right, and then it brings us into where I can adjust the edges. And I'm going to say No Edges. And then I'm going to go up here and choose No Scratches, which is this blank box right here. The other thing I'm going to do, there's a halo. It's really a vignette, but if I turn off the halo, watch the image. There's off, and there's enabled. I like to turn it off. Pardon me. I like to turn it off because sometimes it doesn't. The vignette doesn't work very well. So I usually turn it off. Once I've made those changes, then I can go hit the back button, and it takes me back to this screen where I can make some adjustments to brightness, contrast, tone, and color intensity. I don't usually mess with brightness, contrast, and tone but I do play with the color intensity. So if I slide that slider all the way up to the right, look, we're almost back to our normal color image. But as I bring it back down to the other end, there's total sepia or sepia tone. So I'm going to bring this somewhere in between, because what I'm going for is a look that has a little color to it, but has that sepia tone look too. But I want more sepia tone than color, because we're going to blend this back with the other image, and that's where I can get the color back. So I'm going to say OK, and there's our image now. And that's fine. I'm going to keep it just like that, and I'm going to say save. I'm going to tap the save button, and it asks me if I want low or high. I always choose high here, but I have to tell you, this older app, high isn't all that high. It's still a very low, relatively low resolution image. So the blending that we're about to do with the higher resolution image that came out of SnapSeed is really important to getting a higher resolution result if you're going to print. So this takes a second. It's not the fastest app in the world, but I love that it's been consistently effective all these years. I really like the output from it. But it does take its sweet time. It's almost done. There we go. So I'm going to tap continue, and that's now I'm ready to go back and look at my camera roll. So if we go out here, there's the SnapSeed image that we processed in Old Photo Pro, and there's the sepia tone image that we got out of Old Photo. So now I want to blend those two together in Image Blender. So I am going to go to Image Blender, and again it's in my tray because I just used it. Tap on Image Blender, and it comes up, and I've got two empty places to put new pictures. So I'm going to tap on the left box first, go to the library, and I'm going to choose the camera roll, and I'm going to choose the picture that came out of SnapSeed and put that on the left in Image Blender. And then I'm going to go over to the other box on the right and go get that sepia tone image from our camera roll, the one right here, and put that one on the right. So now here we are in Image Blender. And if I take this slider down here, I can slide all the way to the left, and there's the SnapSeed image with its full color and everything, and all the way to the right, and there is the full sepia tone image. So what I'm looking for is something in between. When I was going to school years ago and playing with film in black and white, one of the things that we used to do was take a black and white image, print it out, and then hand tint it using Marshall oil paints. And you get this really interesting, soft, muted color look. Well, that's what I'm going for a lot of times with this particular blend of sepia tone with the colored image. So I'm gonna crank this up here maybe about 3/4 of the way, because I want the sepia tone, but I still want a little hint of color. Now, I can go into my blend modes here by clicking on the icon in the center up here, or by swiping my finger up on the screen, and I could play around with these different blend modes, and believe me, I have on this one, and I still think that I'm going to stay with normal. So once I have that, I swipe my finger down and get rid of those blend modes out of my way. But now I want to have a little fun with this image. There's a tree back here in the back. If I slide to the left, you can see how red that tree is. And if I slide back over here, it sort of tones it down. Well, I want to bring that red out a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to mask in SnapSeed. Just like we masked with the kid on the street in Cuba, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to actually wipe away some of the sepia tone image to allow the color to come through from the other image. So I'm going to tap the pencil on the top and go to the mask mode. And I'm going to increase the size here so I can see that tree back there. And then I'm just going to begin to lightly paint. Oops. Let me increase this so I can see. These are those sliders that let you see what you're doing, and I couldn't see the color. So I just want to go back in here and just very gently bring in some of that color. And I'm going to save it. And I'm going to bring this over to where I've got more sepia tone, and I got that little pop of color in there. And there's my image. I'm going to go ahead and hit the save icon up here in the corner and save it to the camera roll. And let's just go out and look at that. And so here's the whole sequence. Oops. Here's the picture right out of SnapSeed, which is just great the way it is. There's the full sepia tone right out of Old Photo Pro. And here's our blended version with the pop of color. As I look at this right now, going through it, I might have, let's just go back here really quickly to Image Blender. I think I would probably back this off even more and allow a little more color to come through. So it's still, there's too much, there's not enough, and I think I want more green. So I'm going to resave this after that adjustment. Now let's go look at it again. Whoops. In the camera roll. So there's the first one that we did, and there's the second one. It's a toss-up, but I kind of like a little more of the green, but you can be the judge, and you can see where you have lots of opportunity for artistic input. So there you have it. Those are the two images that I wanted to share with you today, and how they work. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email, and I'm happy to talk about these things or share other resources with you as I have them. Before we go, got just a few minutes left in our hour. I wanted to take a minute to do some shameless self-promotion. I mentioned earlier that I do a lot of workshops, and I hope you'll visit and take a look at some of the things that I've got out here at some point. There's a lot of tutorials and things like that in different places. But I wanted to show you my tours real quickly. I'll be going out to going to Cuba again in January. I have room for one more person. We're only taking 8 on this trip, or I'm only taking 8 on this trip. And we have room for one more. We'd need to have that person enroll in the next 2 weeks, because there won't be time to get the charter and everything that we need. So if you have any interest in that, go out to my website, take a look at the details. I'm going again in November, and there's plenty of room in that workshop right now. So if January doesn't work for you, maybe November would. The other thing I wanted to mention, Font Hill Castle, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. It's an incredible photo opportunity to photograph the castle there. My friend John Barclay is lives in that area and has a relationship with the folks at Font Hill, and he's been very kind in helping me arrange, allowing me to come and photograph there. I'll be going out there in May and again in September, and there's a limit of 9 for this trip, because we're allowed to go into the castle. We have the entire castle to ourselves for 4 hours on a Sunday morning. No one else there but us, and they limit that group to 9. So that's why we keep that one down. Both of those are starting to fill, but at the moment we do have a couple openings in each. So I wanted you to know about that. It's like I said, it's a great opportunity. We photograph not only the castle, but also we go down to Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, and also Longwood Gardens, which is the old DuPont estate, an incredible photo opportunity there of beautiful florals and trees and that sort of thing. And then also Graffiti Underground, which is the coal piers down along the Delaware River. So it's a really a great 3.5 days of stuff. We do iPhone as well as big camera, and I'll be doing a couple-hour iPhone workshop on Sunday afternoon. And then also in August, heading out to Ireland for about 9 days with Peter Cox. Peter is a resident of Kerry County, and he knows this part of Ireland very well. And will be in the southwest corner of the Dingle Peninsula, it's just some of the most beautiful landscapes anywhere in the world. Very excited to be going and doing that workshop with Peter in August. In the spring, I'll be doing the Palouse with John Barclay. We'll be partnering on that one. We've been doing some workshops together, which has been really fun for me to get to work with John. This is a tremendous photographer. He's been a mentor and great friend to me for a long time, and getting to work with him has just been a real dream come true. I'll then be doing the Harvest Palouse next year also with my partner Sally Wolf from Indianapolis, another tremendous big camera photographer. And then John and I will also be partnering for the Great Smoky Mountains in the spring. We just did the fall in October. It was a tremendous experience both for iPhone and traditional cameras photographers, and we had a great time. We're going to be doing the spring again this year, and then also the fall next year. And then Betty Wiley and I. Betty Wiley is a tremendous photographer on the East Coast. She's you'll see her work on magazine covers and everything out there for different things. We'll be doing the North Shore and Provincetown. These are areas not far from Boston on the East Coast. Absolutely tremendous opportunity to photograph harbors and lobster shacks, and those. It's a remarkable experience. So just wanted to share some of those with you. I hope you'll consider joining me on one of those trips. And then finally, before I let you go, I just want to let you know these. I'm going to be continuing this series of how I did it, where I take a couple of images and really go into the details on how I created what I did. This was the first in that series, and this one was free. The subsequent ones I'm going to charge $20 for. They'll be very similar to what we just did, only different details. I'll be offering 5 of those over the next 2 months, and they're $20 for each one if you want to do them a la carte, or if you want to sign up for all 5, those would be $80. So I'll be sending you some information about that, and I hope you join me on some of these other webinars in the future. I'll be sending out the recording of this of what we went over today, so you can go back and look at it at your convenience in the future. Thanks again for joining me today. It was a blast, and I hope to see you again online or on a trip in the future in person. Happy holidays, everyone. Bye.